Bartholomew was cold. It was early morning in the looming shadow of the stone edifice that Bart had leaned against to steal sleep from the world. He felt the Caribe moisture deposited on the slime of the rocks, the floor of the central plaza of Habana. It was not so different than the wet, cold deck of a pirate vessel in the morning, though it was the absence of the blue sea that most made itself known. Bart looked out again at the plaza, and his view was drawn to the pigeons flocking away from its center. The grime from the day was the worst of all the feeling he had in these past few mornings. The scorn and the derision by the passer-by, the rouse by the Habsburg guards, carrying rifles on their shoulders, all this Bart could carry in his psyche. Bart the scorned and Bart the festering. It was the lack of water around him that annoyed the pirate, the way that he could not wash, and he could not slough away the burnt film of dirt caked to his skin, as he could on sail-rigged ship over blue waters. Bart watched the mourning procession into the municipal building. There was not the feared silhouette that he sought, no enameled chestplate, no shining set of armor reflecting of the sun, no sword scabbard just as tall as Bart himself, and Bart felt distraught. The image of such leviathan equite remained etched into Bart's mind. It had played over and again when he could see the green flames dancing off the hard Escapelian carapace, the attack upon the rough decks of the Viciosa, that great blade flashing and placed exactly at Bart's least defended quarter. That was what repeated over and again in his mind's eye. Bart turned his head only slightly to see the many-arched municipal building, and in front of such there lay the gallows. These were raised out of bed of unctuous earth with a black spotted walk rising up to the head height of a man, far above the crossbars. Dangling ropes stretched taut waved from the day before, militants of the Bayou guerrillas, their black face turned purple. Next to these, a pirate swung from these gallows, white and red and black faces, wrinkled and squelched and turned purple all in common. Bart stood, swaying on his feet after so long cramped on the ground. He remained bent as he shuffled across the plaza, crossing paths with two women strolling under parasail, their dresses colored bright yet red and yellow with ruffled busts and flowing tails. Bart felt true hesitation and shame before them when he recalled that he had not washed in all these days, sleeping on the stones. He had grown quite ripe in smell in fostering the disguise of poverty, the cloak of such intrusion into the nostrils, the surest of the senses to overpower inquisitive intuition. The ensoured pirate was left alone in his middle of the central plaza of Havana, and Bart began his shuffled gait once more, and further he limped and he reached an alley, where an old wrinkled merchant sorted gray wares in his cart. The man was wizened in years, though his hair was still coal black, and there was a smile etched into his creased face. B. What of it, friend? How does the day treat you? N. Hidden man. Today is as good as any other. B. Grant me a moke of tobacco. N. I receive my living from the tobacco leaf. I cannot simply gift it. Bart searched in many folds of his breeches, and a pair of coins were there, old, chipped, and dented. B. What would make you happy? 2 coins? 3? N. 3 silver pennies. 3. The men made an exchange. The old man studied the coin in his hand, peering at it for a long moment. Once completed his pondering, he moved to a small barrel on the cart, and opened it. He removed large crinkling leaves from the top of it. There the man removed several smaller more, and the man began to manipulate the fronds into the body of the cigar. The man rolled the cigar, shaping the thing, sealing it, finished the form of the thing, and brought it to his mouth. He lit it on a sconce that was smoldering for the purpose of his customers. The smoke already was filtering into the pirate's lungs. An exertion ran through his veins, the stimulant finding its way to the tips of his fingers. Bart received the drug, and he brought it to his mouth, breathing through it, and his lungs filled with a feeling of acrid, burnt flesh. The feeling of tobacco smoke became a rancid tooth and claw rasping in his chest. Bart coughed horrendously, hacking and gasping. The old man smiled at the discomfort of his piratical friend. N. I had thought that the roll was mild. I had found the leaves specially for your bacan. B. This is a lot. I don't have these often. N. A pirate does not partake. B. Not a blue water pirate. We sell wet and we sell fast. And it is much easier to preserve rum in an open cask than to preserve these fonts of ash and of dust. And I have seen that you are fresh to the dust of the city, not like the mangle-headed Mlakashama. You are easy to spy in your hunting. B. Am I so ill-suited to the profession? And I am sure that the Spanish, as blind as they are, will overlook you. B. Good. At the least I have escaped the noose until now. And the same is said of all of us who have not yet begun to ascend the gallows stairs. Bart remembered the familiar feeling of the smoke as the chemical began to pass through his blood and enter his nerve endings and to seep out his capillaries. Whole branches of twigs and buds and stretching arvo growths existing within his flesh, glades and glens and forests stretching for leagues in undulating hillocks through his arms and chest and throat. The experience was becoming difficult to bear, this affect of the leaf. It had become nauseating. Bart began to feel the great detachment, the exhilaration of the passage of moments around him, the expectorant exhilaration of the sublimation of the future coming due. B. You are a friend, then, of Techerin. N. I know of the man, the Boucanier king. He has knowledge that man must exist on land, that seafarers are strange fish. You of all must know this, correct? B. I know that the sea, on there is no rich, there is no poor. There are barely empire and there is barely boucanier. The sea accepts your flesh all the same, for once anybody is enveloped, they will sink to its depths. N. B. Good day then, harbinger of the red kodaks. N. Do not drown today, pirate. Bart turned and walked back into the plaza. At its entrance he breathed deeply of the humid air, smelling of burning dust upon stone and upon drying timber, of used incense and flaking corpse emanating from crypt of enshadowed cathedral, smelling of the ripe excrement underfoot of gallows and of the tears spilt by viewer and passer-by. He watched in this haze of nicotine swirling. He peered at the tall hacienda balcons on either side of the radiating streets, ornate possessions inert and finely wrought by the mason, smith, and carpenter, all a scene of wood and metal grate, bent to fleur-de-lis and spiraled in straight-line grate, patterned after the walls and designs of the Arabic viziers of North Africa across the sea Atlantic. Bart came to a point where he could watch the entrance of municipality once again. He found a wall and leaned against such to wait. Looking down to hide his face, the pirate captain watched the plaza from under his brow. The day passed slowly. The sun continued his trek and burned away any mist left in warm morning. The stones of the street scalding beneath him, the air simmering. The plaza before Bart was abandoned to the odd vagrant, the heat consuming all willingness to delve too far out upon the oven's surface. Now the noon procession of the Franciscans showed itself as they escaped their cells. The brown-clad, white-belted friars strode through the square, and another distraction, a 2x2, trundled past Bart. The horse was thin, brushed, a chocolate animal shined vociferously by wire hair at some lush planter establishment, an hour out of the city, its lips foaming in the heat made double by such brilliant stone structures. There a man stepped down from the buggy, black-suited, with top hat, appearing to be made of the same velvet as the regal animal that had brought the wheeled carriage. There this man came to the gate, and a party of officers became material from within dark catacombs to meet the man. A form stepped to the fore with incandescent orange and white in the noon sun. In this apparition there appeared a phantom of the sun, through the arches opening to the municipal's interior. Bart felt adrenaline in extremis, and this figure loomed over him even in its distance. The Boucanier saw now the same silhouette as confronted on Viciosa, over blue foam-capped waves. Now before him the Lech, gaunt and tall, was carven into his mind, a towering, armored European knight, blades and wings arcing off the back of the knight's skull, a grin struck in the face of the silvery bone. Now feathers grew stricken off the rear of the head, Talons and fangs stamped into plates and panels. There in the center's patio, Bartholomew saw this form again after such great expanse of cruel time. Bart felt his heart freeze and crack and split. His eyes widened. His hands clutched for the missing sword hilt. He recalled that in his disguise he was unarmed and vulnerable. The implement of such art hidden. Bart felt bile rising in his throat. He wanted to run and drop and hide in the dark, dripping cavern he had come through to emerge into this world of sunrise and cloud. Bart realized that he must return to his beginning and retrieve his sword, placed in the tree at his previous station. He made to cross the open plaza as this man in velvet black suit came to the municipal gate. Now a tall Nordic white man revealed this hellish figure had removed its helmet, marking him as the Falconer Knight, a thorned curved cross of Malta on a ribbon strung around his neck, announcing his affiliation to such dusty cult devotion. The knight began to speak to the stranger, beyond the reach of Bart's ears. This equite, unwelcoming, in armor incandescent, orange and in white. The target of all these days of waiting, the Grand Espada upon the Cuba's greatest city, Habana. This equite hospitalier began to speak in a raised voice, booming and gruff, commanding the top hat man to step away. The knight was standing past the municipal gates, and the commotion had brought another visitor who was his stead, protectorate to the fore, a familiar face, a man in white blouse and slacks, Escapoles, the Spaniard of the tongue. There was a confluence as Escapoles held court at the entrance in Furnio. Bart knew nothing of what was being said. The guards had bayoneted muskets, the sun a degree away from apogee, fluttering a reflection off the towel blades of the apex of these firearms. The shadows on the ground were slim, but dark, an absence in the piercing lighted day. A mange dog panted on the step of the cathedral. A vagrant and a child sat on these same steps belonging to the watching lord, begging from the passing dark slaves sent on errand. The gallows were there, bearing hempen fruit, the strands of the rope coming apart hair by hair in such sweltering heat. Bart made it to the tree, the sword now brought down, the scabbard loosened and ready to be shed. Now a bald-pated Franciscan separated from his procession was standing watching the men, yelling back and forth. The black-suited man, with top hat, retreating back to his cab to retrieve the documents of his own errand. A single white-feathered heron flapped over the plaza. The men grew silent and slowed, and there was no more movement. The passage of time was halted into precarious stillness, silence, serene expectation. The wings of the regal bird could be heard in rhythm. Thrum, thruck, thrun. Bart had shed his stained white shirt, and his body was bared to the clouds, staring down upon this square. Now Bartholomew, now bladed, now strode past gallows with open steel, the watching scabbard thrown to the ground behind him. Bart encroached upon the gate, raising the English length and a quarter to point it directly at the silver falconer knight. The implement held out in dire, grim, effusive threat to the Iberian. The guards were surprised. They were unblooded. They did not bring their guns to bear. The falconer did have experience in this great declaration. He did have experience in this black game. The man of dust and mud and blood was calm and appreciating the pirate who approached. The knight began the confrontation with his buccaneer by grabbing the hilt of his sword, removing the grand metal that sounded as a pharaoh bore in a moment of exertion, a sound of harsh shra emanating from the belt. The leather cat clattered to the ground. Now the clawing, biting dragon stared at the bright sun, the blue of the sky burning and simmering, enclosing the flesh of these men in the dripping Habana air. The remnants of the day melted into white heat. The church steps, the bricks of the plaza, the center jutting plinth, the passerby and a clouded observer, all faded to gray mush.